Hi everybody, my name's G. Falkenberg. I'm a student at Oregon State University studying fisheries, wildlife, conservation sciences, and my research project was a field study project searching for amphibians in the protected stormwater reservoirs that clean and redirect stormwater runoff back into the Tualatin River. So the Tualatin River watershed is managed by the Clean Water Services, Washington County, and 12 partner cities, and they work together to use native plants and vegetation and science to redirect the water from the neighborhoods, businesses, and industrial areas, clean it, and then put it back into the Tualatin River where it can be used again. My questions are these runoff reservoirs viable locations for amphibians? Can they survive and breed in them? And can amphibians and other wildlife migrate safely in and out of the fenced-in stormwater areas? So here's a couple maps of the Tualatin Watershed District. The left image shows the floodplains and the river system that feeds into the Tualatin River watershed. The right image shows the land management and how it's managed. The majority of it is managed by private companies. My inexperience in field research influenced my project. I've never really done any field research or looked for herps at all, so I had a lot of background questions, like what species live in my area, what types of habitats do they prefer, how do I search for amphibians, what time of day do these amphibians active, and how do they breed and disperse? Some of the challenges I faced were fenced-in areas and a lack of access, and so I thought maybe making recordings and identifying species using pictures through the fences might help me. So in my background research, I found that there's salamanders, newts, there's some turtles and frog species that could be in this area. They like cool, fresh water. They like to breed at this time of the year, so I could be hearing males frogs making announcement calls, and they like fast or slow flowing streams or stagnant ponds, depending on which type of herp I'm looking for. Current threats are habitat modification and destruction, fish, other predators, and other competitors, and pollution from herbicides, industrial chemicals, and pesticides that get absorbed through their skin. So for my methods, I spent my initial field study research identifying 8 locations that I wanted to make connections between for amphibians. The rest of my research was spent 1 hour daytime observations and 1 hour evening observations at each location, taking images and videos, and just making observations on mainly frogs, tadpoles, and other amphibian life history related observations. So here I have 2 overview images of my locations. The left is a Google Maps image that I outlined my 8 locations in, and the right is an image from an app I use called GPS Camera that allows me to make observations and mark my location at the same time. I want to find out, are there frogs or tadpoles or frog calls in these areas? If not, could there be frogs here at some point? Does the water level change over time, and are there access points for amphibians to other locations? So for each of my location slides, my initial observation photos are on the left, and then I went back out 2 to 4 weeks later and did more observations. I'm just gonna go through these really quick. Just note the water level change, the vegetation over time, and I could let you know whether I found amphibians. I did not find any amphibians in this location, but the water does have a way to go in and out of this location. Location 2 is a small isolated pond. There's no water able to come in and out that I can see. I don't see any tubes, and the water level remained the same. But I did find tadpoles here, and I have a video. So this location's water is really clear. It remained pretty low through the whole time. The vegetation grew a lot. I did not see any frogs, tadpoles, or make any amphibian observations. At the times I went to observe at locations 4 and 5, I did not hear any frogs or see any tadpoles. This area is very fenced in and I can't get location or access to the water. But the water level does change drastically here. There's a lot of predators that are around, lots of birds and things. The water's pretty open and there's not as much vegetation to hide in for the amphibians. But there is flowing water through here and they are able to gain access to other locations. Location 6 is a large pond divided by an overpass road. Animals are able to go under and the bridge and pass between both areas. It's very large. Location 6 had a really large bullfrog there on the very last day of my observations, so I was able to get some data finally. This location is really similar to location 6. It's also got a bridge, road bridge that goes over it, and animals are able to go through between both sides. Here you can see a frog on the left, under the underbrush, and some tadpoles swimming in the water on the right. My final location was the Tualatin National Wildlife Refuge. They have lots of listed species here, so I thought this would be a great place to try to find some, because this is part of the area where the water gets fed into my floodplain research area and then back into the Tualatin River down by I-5. I did find frogs here, some really awesome male frogs making some calls. So first I have an example of the frogs I found and then an example from CaliforniaHerps.com. So I just wanted to share my frog findings in a discussion. I think a lot of my results are inconclusive right now, but the water levels that remain the same in the areas, it's because they have no drainage, I think. And I found tadpoles in shallow, cool waters with heavy underwater vegetation and leaf litter. And I found frogs in cool ponds that have dark water and plenty of vegetation and shade to hide around. So any areas that had clear water, high variation in water level, they did not have frogs or tadpoles. So I definitely want to do more research in these areas before I would be able to make any conclusions on my frog dispersal results. I just don't know enough about the area and the access points, and I think gaining access to the areas would help me in the future. So more time searching and getting permission from the city to make observations closer to the water would be helpful for me in the future. And as always, I'm left with more questions than answers. So now I want to know, how are these areas maintained by Clearwater Services and how often? Are there more amphibians than just American bullfrogs using these runoff areas? And I know there's lots more amphibians out in these areas because they're listed on the Fish and Wildlife Services website as well as the Tualatin National Wildlife Refuge list. So I want to find out where those are. And then what is the survival rate of the tadpoles that I found, and how does the survival rate vary from location to location? And I just want to say a quick thank you to Todd McKinney. He's a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services park ranger at the Tualatin River National Wildlife Refuge and offered his time to meet with me about some of the herps that live in their area and what ways I can try to go find herps while I was doing my research project. And then again, my OSU instructor, Mark Lepin, for giving me this opportunity to go out and find some amphibians. And most importantly, I just want to thank you for taking time to listen to my presentation. I know it was a little bit longer, but I really enjoyed doing this, and I'm looking forward to getting back out there and doing more research in this area.